Good morning, family and friends of Oakland Cemetery. This is Sean, got Mr. Steve Harmon behind the camera. We have an interesting topic today. Right now, by the way, happy Easter to anyone out there celebrating Easter. It's a gorgeous 55-degree day here in Norfolk, or actually in the Hampton Roads area. And what we're covering today are temporary markers. And we actually have a list of 12 of these, or a little over 10 of these temporary markers that we want to cover. And so we're probably going to have to break the video up in half because there's a lot of detail that we want to cover for you in these videos. And of course, as always, if you have any questions, just leave it in the comment section below. If there's something I mentioned that we're going to do up front and then maybe I just didn't get to it later on, just put it in the comment section below and we'll do our best to cover it. Just kind of on the top of the video, you see this PVC pipe in front of me. We actually have the topic of discussion is this thing called a temporary marker. Usually these are put in place after the individual passes. They'll be basically placed into the ground, almost in a structure like this. So this is like a full temporary marker, and it'll designate where the individual lays. Finally, fast forward, if a stone is ordered, the temporary marker is either maintained or removed, and the stone is put in place. Hence, temporary marker. So what we're going to cover are a couple things. First of all, here's our goals. One is we're going to document the temporary marker. Some of these have not been seen in at least over 50 years, if not greater. When we finally get our temporary marker, we're going to actually take a picture of it from top down, as well as a perspective view, just for the fact that in case it gets covered over again. And then we're still in the process of trying to figure out, once we do find a temporary marker, based off of its physical condition, it can be like this, or it can be where there's a high bit of integrity on it, where it's still in decent shape. So what we decided to do, until we come up with a solid plan moving forward, is that we're going to, regardless of the condition of the temporary marker, we're going to have it, instead of buried under the ground, it'll be setting on top of the plug of grass. And what we're going to do is we're just going to cut off a plug of grass about, it was going to be a 1 foot by 1 foot, but it's about a 1 foot by 8 inch template. And we'll just set that temporary marker on top, just like that. And then it'll be recessed about 1 inch below the ground. The reason we say 1 inch below the ground is so that way the lawn equipment doesn't have the potential of damaging the actual marker itself in the future. And then once we clean and document the marker in place, there's a couple things we want to point out in regards to these markers based off previous experience. When you are looking for temporary markers, we actually use our metal probing tool to find this temporary marker. And in fact, this particular individual with the name of James Cutler, C-U-T-L-E-R, he was actually documented in the cemetery book as unmarked. So I thought, in a literal sense, unmarked means he doesn't have a stone, doesn't have a marker, and there's just a tomb. And we've actually found that a lot here in the cemetery. But fortunately, we actually did find his temporary marker, and that's where we have this PVC pipe marked to actually show his location. We'll give you a zoomed in look on it a little bit later, but a couple things we want to point out. Like we said, this temporary marker can be solid when you find it, and then on other times it will be rather fragile because the rust is either, there's a couple of these screws on the back, sometimes they will rust out. So even though it is exciting to find one, just kind of be very careful when you decide to take these out. So that's why we say try to clean it in place, document it as well as you can, and then remove it. The reason being, if you decide to pull the top plate or the temporary marker thinking you're pulling the whole thing, you can actually physically separate it, and all the letterings that would have been right here would have just fell in. And that can be a really disheartening situation and a discouraging situation. So that's why I wanted to point that out here right up front. So, and some of these that we have found, you're going to see that they just have a name. They don't have any dates. They've been rusted through. but our main thing was documentation and then preserve these as well as we can. So what we're going to do right now, I'm just going to go ahead and move this PVC pipe. We have this plug of grass. And this individual, the reason why we actually look for this, in the book it says that his marker, even though it's unmarked, was in the Betty Johnson and Infants plot. So we used our probing tool. Sure enough, we found his site, and it's James, James, Brindle, Brindle, Cutler, born in 1876, passed away in 1957, and we found his marker probably about 4 inches below the ground. And then what we're going to do is, one, we're going to verify the physical integrity of it, and the next shot that you're going to see of this is most likely when we're actually going to have it above the ground on top of the grass plug, and then we'll show you just a general cleaning of it. So we'll see you in the next cut. Folks and family, we're basically at Mr. Cutler's site, and fortunately we're able to actually have a full marker. What we did, this marker was about 4 inches below the ground. We, one, verified the integrity, two, documented the name and the date of death and date of birth and date of death. We also have these plugs of grass, which we're going to set aside once we actually finish cleaning the stone. So what you're going to see right now, we're going to go ahead and clean the stone, and I'm going to get to work.
What year again did he pass?
So he passed away in 1957, and I'll clarify that once I get it cleaned up.
No telling how long that's been down.
All right, folks, just because we got it cleaned, I'm going to go ahead and read it off. Yeah, James Brindle, Brindle, Cutler, born in 1876, 1957 is when he passed. This marker, there's actually sometimes a designator of who put the marker here. This so happens to be R. Hayden Smith. So what we're going to do in the next little clip here, we're going to put our plugs of grass, fill in some dirt on the bottom, and we're actually going to depress this marker about 1 inch below the ground. So that way it minimizes the risk of damage to the actual marker itself. All right, folks, so we have Mr. Cutler's temporary marker, basically raised from where it was about probably for at least, we can confidently say it's been under the ground for at least 40 years, because when there was a book documenting this, it still had it as a unmarked grave. So we're happy to find it, and in fact, the blessing in disguise is we probably have about 40 of these that are in the unmarked, but now we're actually finding these. So it looks like we're still going to make an attempt to look at these in the future, and then we'll see you in the next cut with a little closeout of this temporary marker. We're at the conclusion of our one. We've got a lot ahead of us, so we're going to cover a lot. So Mr. James Brindle, Cutler, his temporary marker, even though it says unmarked in the book. We have found it. We took one of our final steps for documentation is we're going to take a top-down video, or excuse me, a top-down picture, as well as a wide-angle picture. That way, in the event this marker gets overgrown, then someone who's looking for this marker in the future will be able to find it. And that's it for this next cut, and we have a lot ahead of you, so we'll see you in a little bit. Alright folks and family, we're back here in section 4 of our temporary marker segment of this video. Not every temporary marker is going to be the same. You know, we always say this about the gravestone. Not every gravestone experience is going to be the same. Same thing goes with these temporary markers. And the one that we found here, the name is Daniel W. as in William, and the last name L-A-M-B, and then there's a space, and then the letter R. Now, there is a couple things that you can speculate on this, but when it comes to documenting it, one, this individual was never documented in the cemetery. So what we did is we took a top-down picture. We also took a perspective picture, so a wide-angle picture, and referenced this lot right here in section 4. What we're going to do, though, just like we mentioned in the earlier part of the video, where I have this PVC pipe, his marker was probably about 2 to 3 inches below, because this is kind of a rather harder ground. So, but the marker is very sensitive. It's very fragile. So what we're going to do is we're going to clean off the marker, remove it, and then we have this grass plug that we kind of cleaned off, and we'll make sure that his marker has been recessed probably about 1 inch below the ground, and that'll kind of conclude where we're going to go. So I'm going to go ahead and get to work, and then we'll see you in a little bit. And just give you a heads up, we use this piece of cardboard to kind of put basically we cut a grass plug using this as a template, and then we'll put the grass plug under, and then we should be good to go. And I'm going to clean this marker off to the side.
That marker looks like it's a stamped one. They must have had a pretty nice little machine to set up and stamp them out.
Okay. I'm just going to do a general cleaning of this marker to at least expose the name. It's going to actually rain here later on today, so that should cover a lot of the cleaning after the fact. But one we wanted to do is just at a minimum get the name cleaned up so that way we can document it. And then we're going to go ahead and put the plug of grass so that way this thing stays safe. Alright folks and family, that kind of covers the raise reset and then the initial placement of this marker. And then basically we wanted to make sure that we documented it, two, that we got it right below the ground. So it's kind of hard to see because this area where I'm sitting in actually kind of contours. So that's where his marker is, and we have a couple markers ahead of us, so we'll see you in the next cut. Family and friends, we're back here at Section 5. We've got a lot of videos out here in Section 5. And we're at the site of Mr. A as in Adom Graham. And just want to point out something. This temporary marker we actually found a couple videos ago. We did the uncovering or the finding of or unearthing of infant stones. Well, in the process of probing for those stones, we actually ran across this marker here, and I'll just kind of use this knife to kind of point out where that temporary marker is. So what we're going to do, we're going to raise this temporary marker up, basically clean out as well as we can, and then I have some pine straw off to my right, which we're going to put on the bottom because this marker was not actually buried too far deep. And that's all. You can also kind of figure that out because it's right next to a tree. So a lot of the root activity may have just caused the marker to be on top of the roots, vice the bottom. It's usually it's a challenge when the temporary marker goes below the root. So what we're going to do is we're going to get to cleaning this marker. What we did is we did take a documentation of the name and the reading. One thing we did notice is the year. It says 19, there's a space, then the number 4. But based off the Find a Grave entry, it actually says 1954. So if you're ever digging this area out and you happen to find the missing number and the missing letter, you can always put it nearby or something like that. Finally, this temporary marker was documented by C. Lotta to be almost in this area. So not too long ago, there was this section right here in Section 5, right next to me or right behind the camera, is called the teardrop section. And basically it had a number and a grave cross-reference. So if this was Alpha through Zulu, and the numbers from here are 1 through 10, basically from F, Foxtrot, 27, where that marked in was supposedly where this marker was. And sure enough, once we looked at it after the fact, this temporary marker was right about in that range. So there was a lot of tools we had at our disposal. We're luckily enough to be able to find this marker, and time for me to get to work. Real quick. So when we talk about these markers, we notice that this one had a stem. Usually they just get pushed into the ground. So I got a little bit of dirt to kind of bring it level to the ground. And then I'll put some pine straw on it for visibility. And eventually the grass will grow into it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that kind of concludes. We have one more closeout when we're actually done. But that concludes the cleaning, the raising of the temporary marker, and then just to identify, it's Alfred, or correction, A as in Adam, M as in Mike, Graham, Graham. Individual was born in 1878, passed away in 1954. So even though the 5 is missing, the Find a Grave Memorial did mention 1954. So we actually have this Mr. Graham's temporary marker documented. We will take a top-down view as well as taking down a wide-angle view, so that way in the event it gets covered again, a individual looking for this marker will be able to find it here in the future. We'll see you in the next temporary marker. All right, folks and family, we're back here at Section 5 of Oakland Cemetery. We're actually at the site of baby boy Vinke, Vincke. He was born in 1920, or correction, he was born March 20 and 1945. So born and passed away in 1945. We don't have any more amplifying information on that, but this was a marker that we found by probing this area for lost infant gravestones, and we weren't expecting to find this stone because it wasn't even documented in the book, nor did we see this on the infant grave site with the cemetery map. So we're going to go ahead and clean the stone. We already put the stone up, the temporary marker up. We put a grass plug under it, and we dressed some of this up with the pine needles. So we're going to get to cleaning, and I'm going to get to work. All right, folks and family, we are at the site of baby boy Vinke, Vincke, and I was expecting a year on this first slot that you see off to your right. In fact, or actually to the camera's left, it actually says March 20th, and passed away in 1945. And then, of course, the custodians were R. Hayden Smith, who manufactured the temporary marker. So just like with everything else, because it was covered in the past, we're going to take a top-down picture as well as a wide-angle picture for baby boy Vinke. And then other than that, we kind of expedited through this temporary marker. But if you have any questions about the process, leave it in the comment section below. And we have one more stone, one more temporary marker to close out, and we'll see you in the next cut. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at the conclusion of our part 1, or at least part 1 of our temporary marker expedition. We're at the site of Mr. Frank and Lillian Alexander. The story behind this one, we already kind of set the temporary marker up to level, as you may see in the solid cut. The story behind this one, Mr. Alexander, who's a World War II vet, also served in during Korea and Vietnam. He was buried here. And the thing was, there was a note that his wife, Lillian Alexander, her temporary marker was somewhere near Mr. Alexander's. The thing was, that entry of the obituary did not mention where she was buried. And big credit to Miss Dawn Billick, who documented this through Find a Grave. And she had mentioned that she's covered or probably documented well over 40,000 markers, graves, memorial sites, and whatnot. The long and short of it, that gave us kind of like some direction to say, okay, let's probe around the area, see if we find a temporary marker or a stone. And sure enough, we did find Lillian Alexander's stone. I can easily say after 20 years, she was born in 1921, passed away in 2004. And we just got a set of flowers here that we're just going to place at her site. And that kind of concludes the temporary marker part 1, if you will. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave it in the comments section below. Drop us a like and subscribe. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you in part 2.